Turns out, cognitive biases at work. Your boss asks you to make $1 million decision. You've got 15 minutes. Your inbox is on fire. Someone's breathing down your neck about the deadline. And right now, in that exact moment of panic, your brain is lying to you in ways you'll never notice. Not because you're dumb, because you're human. And humans under pressure don't think clearer. They think faster. Which sounds useful until you realize faster thinking is usually just confidence dressed up as competence. So here's the question. How much of your worst decision at work wasn't actually your fault? We've known for decades that cognitive biases exist. Overconfidence, herding, following the crowd even when you shouldn't. Decision paralysis when options get complicated. They're real, they're documented, and they're everywhere. But here's what science didn't know. These biases don't hit everyone the same way. They don't even hit the same person the same way twice. Context matters. Pressure matters. The specific way your environment is set up matters enormously. And until recently, we didn't have a clear picture of how. A researcher named B. Ohms at Teesside University International Business School decided to dig into this gap. The study came out in 2026 in Frontiers in Psychology, and what Ohms found is genuinely unsettling because it suggests your worst professional decisions aren't random acts of stupidity. They're predictable consequences of the exact conditions you're working in. So here's how this worked. Ohms gathered 357 employees in Singapore, real people doing real work. The researchers put them through a series of decision-making scenarios. But here's the clever part. They didn't just test whether biases existed. They specifically manipulated two variables, time pressure and task complexity, to see how those variables changed the way biases operated. Think of it like watching how a car handles in different weather. The car is the same. The road is different. And the way the car performs changes completely depending on conditions. Using statistical analysis called multiple linear regression with HC3 robust standard errors, Ohms tested whether time pressure and complexity moderated the influence of three specific biases: overconfidence, herding, and decision avoidance. The data came from a large sample working in genuine organizational settings. This wasn't a psychology lab where people make decisions about hypothetical scenarios. These were actual workplace employees making real professional choices under real constraints. And this is where the findings get interesting. First, overconfidence under time pressure got worse, much worse. When people had limited time, they stopped gathering information carefully. They stopped questioning their gut instinct. They stopped doing what's actually necessary for good decision-making. Instead, they relied on fast, automatic processing, what psychologists call heuristics. And heuristics feel great. They feel like you know what you're doing, you feel confident, you feel right, but you're actually overconfident. You're operating on incomplete information and not even noticing. Imagine you're hiring someone for a critical role and you've got 3 hours to decide instead of 3 days. You'll probably hire faster, and you'll probably be more sure of your choice, but you'll also probably be wrong more often. That's what time pressure does. Second finding, herding also got amplified by time pressure. When you don't have time to think independently, you look at what others around you are doing. It feels like evidence. If 3 colleagues think we should do X, maybe X is right, so you follow them. Except now multiple people are all following the same fast heuristic and nobody's actually thinking. This is how mediocre ideas can cascade into huge problems in organizations. One person suggests something. 5 people agree quickly because they're also under time pressure. Suddenly you've got consensus. Except consensus built under pressure isn't consensus. It's just synchronized shortcutting. Third, task complexity created a different problem. When the decision got complicated, more variables, more options, more things to consider, people froze. decision avoidance skyrocketed. Not because they were lazy, because their brain was overloaded. They literally couldn't process all the information. So instead of trying, they just didn't decide. They procrastinated. They passed the decision to someone else. They hoped it would resolve itself. And the more complex the task, the worse this got. Here's what's crucial, though. These effects weren't tiny. The study showed meaningful, measurable changes in how biases operated. But Ohms was careful not to overstate. This wasn't a study that proves biases cause all workplace failures. It's a study that shows context dramatically changes how biases influence behavior. That's different. That's more honest. So what does this actually mean for your life? If you work in an office or run a team or make decisions under pressure, this is directly relevant. It means that when you're hiring someone, closing a deal, or deciding strategy, the conditions matter as much as your expertise. It means that knowing you're biased isn't enough. You need to actively change the conditions that amplify those biases. If time pressure makes you overconfident and causes you to herd, then maybe don't make big decisions when you're rushed. Maybe slow down deliberately. Build in buffer time. Question your quick agreement with others. If task complexity freezes you, maybe break complex decisions into smaller pieces. Maybe get help earlier. Maybe accept that some decisions can't be made alone. One limit worth noting: this study was conducted in Singapore with 357 employees. Different cultures, different industries, different organizations might show different patterns. Also, the study doesn't tell you what the actual consequences were. It shows the biases shifted. But it doesn't measure whether this led to objectively worse decisions long term. That's the kind of study that would take years and cost a fortune. But here's what this sits within: a growing recognition that behavioral economics isn't just about individual irrationality. It's about how systems, timelines, and pressures shape decision-making in predictable ways. This challenges the old assumption that if you're smart and knowledgeable, you'll make good decisions. That's incomplete. You could be brilliant and still make terrible decisions if you're under the wrong conditions. That's not a character flaw. That's just how human cognition works. The really wild implication? Organizations could theoretically redesign how decisions get made just by changing when and how much information people have to process. You could potentially reduce bad decisions without hiring smarter people. You could just restructure the decision-making process itself. Most organizations don't do that, which means most bad decisions aren't inevitable. They're designed in. Your worst workplace decisions probably weren't your fault. They were your brain responding exactly as evolution designed it to respond to stress and overload. The question isn't how to blame yourself less. The question is how to structure your decisions so your brain doesn't have to choose between speed and accuracy in the first place. Turns out, scientists have been busy, and they're not done yet.